Welcome everyone to the Fargo Parking Commission. We'll start with introductions. Debbie, do you want to start?
Debbie Ensrew, Planning and Development Department.
Jim Gilmore, City of Fargo staff.
Brian here, Managing Director of Bell Insurance.
Margie Bailey, Executive Director, Fargo Theater, retired.
Mike Williams, Risk Manager.
Randy Thorson, Downtown Business Owner.
Jay Krabenhoff, Gate City Bank.
Dave Pepcorn, Fargo City Commission.
Thanks, everybody. It's, I think, going to be an 80-degree day. We were just talking about it. If anybody says it's too hot, we got to give them a frown anyway, really. So the first item is to approve the order of agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Next is the minutes of the meeting, April 25th, 2019. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then the next thing, we'll go with Paul. You're going to give the interstate report?
I am. I apologize. Vanessa had a long planned family reunion in San Antonio. She'll be back this afternoon, so I will be pinch hitting for her, so I apologize in advance. So I do submit the financial report for the month of April. I did notice there was a mistake in there that we will be correcting. We accidentally charged some snow to one of the lots, and that is part of our management fee. So we'll be correcting that on a year-to-date basis. It happened in the NP lot and the Civic lot, so we will be reversing those things to the tune of about $14,000 year-to-date, it looks like. So, but other than that, outside of the snow and things like that, the revenue is flowing as predicted. Expenses are right in line. We've started our spring cleanup things. We've got some fence repairs and landscaping starting throughout the lots next week. Most notably, NP Avenues always has issues with the fence every year. So we've got that going on. GTC and Island Park are going to be swept and washed the first part of June. That's probably a 2-week process. Done mostly at night. They'll do some prep work during the day and stuff like that, but the rest of it will be done overnight. And then the last thing, just good report last night. Just last night at Roco, after 10:30 at night, we had we don't think there was anything malicious, but there were 3 people in masks running around scaring kids, scaring people. So we called security. They confronted the kids and kicked them out and called the police. There was no report filed as far as we can tell. No damage or anything like that. I think it was just mischievous kids in their silly clown mask trying to scare kids. But one of them happened to be Vanessa's neighbor, and he called her and made her aware of it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, our patrol is roving patrol, so they kind of wait for those guys to leave, then they pop out of their car and stuff like that. But after the cops got there, they were not seen again. So we do have some footage of it that we are going to forward to the police just in case. But it sounds like just some kids trying to play pranks. But we did take it seriously and followed the protocol and got security and the police involved. So.
Right. So I was over at the Roberts ramp with John and Vanessa, and we were just looking, for the EV chargers, the area that we are looking at installing those. But John had mentioned that there's no TV camera coverage looking at that door that comes in from the alley. And, that might be a spot. So who reviews all that stuff?
Well, it's all recorded and kept digitally on file. So we record it as on an incident base only. Nothing is monitored like that. But yeah, we respond to inquiries. That's the only time we would pull them up.
Right. So adding another camera wouldn't be a real big deal. And you know what I'm talking about on that very south end, and then the east entrance from the alley where the bikes come down. Yeah,
there might be a conflict. Right now our cameras cover anything parking related. Stairwells and things like that are outside of our purview, but we do have the type of system that it could be tied in there for recording only. But there's also a citywide program that we might want to tie them into that program instead.
Right. And then there was a drain that was malfunctioning that you guys are working on. Is that something that's under warranty still?
We think so, yeah. That, and there were a couple of CO detectors that were malfunctioning, so we've got the mechanical contractors out for both those, looking at those. They should be under warranty is what our position is. There's nothing negligent about them not working. It just, they didn't work, so.
right? So what's happening is the drain's backing up in that basement and then it freezes, so it's a mess, and so they'll take care of it, but I'm just glad you guys got your,
Yeah, it was tough. I don't know if it was engineered correctly or not, but you know, drains are meant to drain year round, and this one was clogging up and freezing up and creating a little lake of ice that we had to constantly chip away this year. So we haven't reached a solution yet to what that is. If it's going to be constant heat tapes or some way to make sure it doesn't back up in there, but we will have that rectified for next season.
and then stairwells you mentioned, so are they the city's responsibility? Or what is our, Jim, do you know what our agreement is on the stairwells and the ramps? Are they all the same, or are they different as far as who cleans them and maintains them?
The stairwells are under kind of the purview of the condo association, which it includes both Kilborn Group and city representatives. Mark Williams and Steve Sprague are the city representatives. So we have a contract that's contractor that takes care of those stairwells, so, because they're commonly owned, the elevator shafts as well as the stairwells. So, Mark, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I just noticed that it's pretty dingy going down to the alley from the floors in that stairwell, and I know it's hard to keep them clean, but if we have a regular maintenance schedule where we try to clean them up, and those brick walls would be a great place for some murals. So we could maybe turn it over to the Arts Commission.
Just a question for Paul, are you maintaining that stairwell, it's adjacent to the alley, or is that
Well,
under the condo association?
Vanessa brought this point up too. We're going to start. We don't know if it's part of our responsibility or not, but it is very simple for us to do that. So we are going to have it power washed and cleaned. It's gotten pretty good. It wasn't really ever cleaned after construction because they're still using it so much. But when we do our sweeping and washing and restriping this year, we're going to definitely hit that power clean that as well as we can.
Right, but that'll be great, because there's quite a few people that use that alley, and it's a first impression again. The ramp itself looks wonderful, and then the stairwell's a little dingy, but that'll be good to have that. So anybody else have any questions on the financial report?
Yeah, Paul, the revenue's up for the year by $9,000, but, that's really due to the violation revenue that we didn't have last year. So as a result, the revenues, is down about $5,000 from the previous year. So my understanding that would be because ROCO is not included on this revenue page.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's still everything in flux with losing properties and adding, Second Avenue North and
Right.
South are gone now. Third Street is gone, or Third Avenue is gone.
Correct.
And I do believe, I'm sorry, I forgot to bring this up, that you will see a $28,000 violation revenue in there. We believe that's actually the city revenue. In January, they converted their citation system to mirror ours using the company called Passport. Passport, it appears, started sending us money for the city's citations instead of the parking citations. So Steve Sprague just brought that to our attention last week. We're working with Passport to try to get that figured out. Their back end has been pretty confusing to figure out for both Steve's team and our team right now.
Okay, so then that revenue less the payroll.
Exactly.
Because you've got the payroll on your side of it?
Well, we do the on-street payroll and the off-street payroll for our areas. But, Kathy and her team, they're still writing tickets throughout the whole city. We think
Okay.
that $28,000 is attributed to what they're doing outside of our purview.
And then, so how does a little tough to read here, just a second.
I don't have my glasses either. so it's
Passport
pretty fuzzy
fees
for me.
then, yeah, it's so small. The passport fees, is that part of
Yes.
the cost of?
Yep, that $13,000 should be the city's portion of that $28,000.
So in the end, this may not be there, that revenue is not going to be there, that difference.
Yeah.
And so what we're looking at is just a $5,000 loss because of the closing of certain parking lots through this construction season?
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I will sit down with Vanessa and we'll do we call it a store-by-store comparison, to see how the existing lots have been doing over the past 5 years. To look at it as a system is kind of tough when you add and subtract properties. But if we can do a store-by-store analysis, that's kind of what we use to judge how things are going for the system.
And I thought you said, Paul, that there was snow on here for 14,000, but I only see 8,600.
Yeah, you'll see it in a couple of pages back where they've got the year-to-date.
Okay,
4 months year-to-date, there's a $12,000 one in the NP lot and 2,000 in the Civic ramp lot. They may have been adjusted already, but I just sent a note to our controller.
that won't
to confirm
adjust
that.
any of the revenue, though?
No,
It's still an
no.
expense on the...
Expense only,
Right.
yeah, and that
Okay.
should be our expense as part of our management fee.
So then the goal, Paul, is for with Passport Parking, that we'll be able to differentiate the downtown parking fine revenue from the city fine revenue.
Yep.
Is that what you're working on right
Yeah,
now?
it's basically how you sign in, and then as each patroller writes a citation, they can identify if it's a city lot or if it's a not city lot. We don't do anything except our city lots. Kathy and her team know how to sign in correctly, and so it's definitely easy to differentiate.
Right. So Kathy, how are you liking this system?
It's getting there.
It's always a work when we make a switch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's going to be better in the long term?
Yeah, I think so. In the long run, it seems to be working pretty good.
Mike, I had a couple observations on the financial report. One, just to follow up on Randy's question, we did see a decline in parking revenue from the Island Park ramp as Sanford moved out of that facility at the end of the year, although the Roberts Commons is doing better than expected and better than last year and better than budgeted. So I think overall our revenue is okay and is up a little bit. The other thing, call your attention to the last three pie graphs on Roberts Commons. I think there's some real positive things that we're seeing there. The first one shows that, we have about 400 monthly parkers in there. That was sort of the main reason we had built the facility. But in April, we had over 10,000 people use that for short-term use. And so in of those, so there's about, during weekdays, we have about 120 a day that are paying to park. When you look at it month-wide, there's over 250 people a day that are using that facility and not having to pay because it's nights and weekends or they're under the 2 hours. And so I think this has been a real positive thing for the downtown to have this facility available, and it shows you it's really well used. And if we can replicate that with Mercantile and allow more places get more people to park with ease downtown, so it's really positive to see people are using it. Our monthly revenue in April just for that hourly parking was $16,000, and you compare that to the NP lot where it was just $3,000. So even though we're giving away 2 hours free, we're certainly making it up with people that decide to stay longer.
Mr. Thorson?
Jim, yeah, I agree with you on that. I think the most amazing thing is the revenue that's been created with the 2-hour free parking. It should be a formula for us going forward on any of these parking garages to be able to utilize that. You wouldn't think that, and I know in Lincoln, Mike, when we were there, they were just doing 1 hour, and you just wouldn't think that you could increase those revenues that way, but I think it gets people used to going into that facility, as well as staying longer in the downtown area.
I know that at Mezzaluna and other restaurants where we've had all the construction, there's just hardly a way to get there. And it's been a savior for this, 2 hours free. Same with Burn Bombs and all those others. But it really, our goal is to help economic development, and that's really what we're doing.
And I think that does that. One of the issues we had early on was with the Fargo Theater, and to be able to get that first 2 hours free if it's a daytime matinee, I don't know their schedules,
yeah.
but and then if you're paying for parking, is it 1 hour, is it a half an hour, whatever that is, it makes it more affordable to even go to the Fargo Theater. So I think all of those things have worked out really well in all the changes.
So Paul, do you know any other places that give 2 hours free in their ramps?
No, I do share this story with our other communities, Duluth and Breckenridge and a couple, Idaho Springs in Colorado we just opened, and they're fascinated by it. Duluth did adopt first hour free, partly to mitigate their main drag in Duluth. Superior Street is under a 3-year construction phase, so they implemented that, but we're seeing the exact same thing. People will stay past the 1 hour because it's only $1 or $2, and the comfort of knowing you're not gonna get a citation. A lot of these people moved off the streets, and I assume that's here too. People don't park on the streets now because they know if they stay past their time, the chances are they're gonna get caught with citations. So now they're moving in where they know they're safe, and, you know, to park 3 hours and pay $1, is definitely a fair deal for most people, so. It's been a huge success everywhere we see it.
So another way that Fargo Parking's leading, and thanks Interstate Parking for helping us do that. So we're all learning as we go, right?
Yep, it's fantastic, thank you.
All right. Anything else on the financial report? Otherwise, we'll move on to the financial report of parking funds. Jim?
No, I don't have anything beyond what Interstate
Right.
has. So.
One of the things that, you know, we're talking about, we're coming up into the budget season, and we're considering, possibly, you know, asking for more uniform enforcement, you know, nighttime enforcement. We don't know what that's gonna look like yet, even though there's a policy in place. We're gonna be looking at that as a parking commission with the DCP and our other neighbors getting input. But the question really is, you know, is it accurate to be about 300,000 in parking revenue in the downtown area annually?
I think if you look at the overall revenue, it's more of in that $200,000 range, and
From parking fines?
and probably the cost of enforcement is close to 100,000. So there's probably a net of 100 to 150,000 that the general fund earns from the downtown parking fines.
Right. So that's part of this discussion, is the cities, again, learning from best practices in other cities. Cities that have, used parking fine revenues to help with cleanliness and safety for that area, they find that the people that are paying those tickets don't mind as much because they're seeing the benefit directly. So that's just something that, you know, we've set a goal that by August, the Parking Commission will send a recommendation for any potential policy changes for that nighttime enforcement, uniform enforcement. And then it's up to the Budget Committee whether they want to do that, and the City Commission eventually, but we'll have a recommendation for them by then. Anything else?
Yeah, I do. You know, I don't know, I think annually we do look at the debt and where we're at. Because I know, isn't the NP Avenue lot, Jim, nearly paid for?
There were 3 lots that we purchased in the railroad that there's 3 years left on that. As we get into the, you know, funding Mercantile, one of the considerations is should we roll that debt into a longer term set of bonds to figure out how to pay for Mercantile. So, but there's 3 years left on that
Right.
at about 100,000 a year.
And you'll let us know on that funding when, if that is rolled?
Right.
I think that's important to know.
I expect by the end, our next meeting in June, you know, Baker Tilly, who is our financial advisor, working on this, will have some recommendations on how to fund Mercantile.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks. Anything else, Jim? Anybody?
Not on the financial report.
All right, thanks. So then the next item is update on downtown projects.
The Block 9 parking garage is, seems to be on schedule. Jay Krabenoff and I had an opportunity to tour that last month. And if you're at all interested, we're willing to give you a tour, and maybe for 2 reasons. One, to see what it looks like. Secondly, that we're looking at that type of construction for the Mercantile facility. So more that precast that they put together on site versus pouring it in place. I think that's going to be the most affordable option. And in talking to Walker Consulting and looking at it, I think it would work just fine here in Fargo. I think it'll last as well as that cast in place. But so if you're interested in that, maybe I'll just email you all and we can get you over there either one at a time, or who's ever interested, we'll get over there in some different small groups.
Thanks.
So that'll be open in August. It's probably about 80% done right now, and I don't have an exact opening date. Once it is open, they are required to provide free parking nights and weekends. And I don't know, if they haven't decided yet in terms of what they're going to be charging for any short-term parking during the day. I think a lot of it will end up being used short-term by the construction workers, but I think some might be available for the public during the day.
Right, that's, again, it's not necessarily just about Block 9, but that's some of the concerns, ongoing concerns is about where the construction vehicles are parking in the prime spots. Melissa had mentioned, Melissa Rademacher with DCP has been getting a lot of complaints again, and I know we're working with our engineering staff, Jeremy and Christy, are working to coordinate some of that, but part of it too is enforcement. So again, maybe interstate parking, and Paul, maybe if you could visit with Jeremy and Christy about some of that and just coordinate, because it's still an issue and it's going to continue to be an issue because we're growing fast and, you know, the locations are changing and they do kind of the shift. They'll park in one block one time and another one another, but I know that when we did the water treatment plant, Bruce Grubb was very specific about where they parked, and they abide by it. So once you get them into that mode, they'll do it. So if they have to bring people in, even, I mean, park on the fringe and you know, kind of van them in, that's really what they have to do. There's certain equipment that we know that we need to have, but not the personal vehicles. So anyway, the mercantile design and timeline?
The Fargo City Commission had authorized the city staff to work on a financing plan and a development agreement for mercantile. Eric Johnson is drafting that development agreement. It'll be a lot like Roco. See, there's some differences. We'll be actually buying the land from them this time. We don't own that. I've got a meeting with Eric and the Kilbourne people next week to work on that agreement. And so probably by the end of June, we'll have a draft for you and the City Commission to start looking at. Also, Finance Director Kent Koss and I met with the city's financial advisor on how to finance the project. Baker Tilly's you know, working on some different options. You know, they mentioned, should we try to refinance some of that existing debt? How do you structure it, maybe with some interest-only payments until we have more TIF revenue? When we look at the overall revenue, it's going to improve greatly as the debt is either paid down or refinanced, and then as tax increment financing revenue from Roco begins to come in about 5 years, so we'll be in better shape. So it's trying to, how do we bridge this short-term need is the kind of the question, and so they're working on that. Also, we're coordinating with the owner of the northern apartment building, is immediately north of that Goodyear building. He's interested in some parking, and we need probably a portion of his back of his property for the ramp to go on to. And so, but he's working with Tom Smith, the owner of Great Northern Cycles, and trying to coordinate all of that. And so we're working on a plat. We're trying to figure out how do we vacate the alley, create a new entrance, and trying to sort all of that out. So those discussions are also ongoing. There's been some interest from both the Fargo Police Department, and I also talked to Paul about interstate parking. There'll be some commercial space on the main floor of the mercantile building. I think they probably don't need to be on the corner, but the police department's been thinking about having a presence downtown, and so maybe having that in this facility, maybe in conjunction with interstate parking, to have maybe a 2,000 square feet of office space or something like that for the downtown resource officers, as well as interstate parking to be a little closer to Broadway and adjacent to one of our facilities. So we're exploring that. And then I did attach JLG. Kilbourne has them working on the schematic design for the project. That's being reviewed by Kilbourne Group and the city. I just attached one of the images, and one of the things that we'll need to do is vacate that alley, as well as, in order to make the ramp fit, we're looking at vacating a portion of Fifth Street. So instead of it's like 70 feet of right-of-way, probably taking 20 feet away from that, and just to allow the ramp to get closer to Fifth Street to make it a more efficient facility. Fifth Street right now, I think it's 50 feet wide, and it's kind of it doesn't have much traffic at all, so it'd be fairly easy to narrow that down and still make it look well, like a good street. And get access to our ramp, so.
Right, well, there's a terminus there though, because actually the road in front of the railroad building that Tom Smith owns is a private road, is that right?
Yeah, that's private property, both on his property and and so whether or not we need some sort of an easement or ability to get through there, at least for pedestrians, that'll all be kind of wrapped into this agreement with.
Then who owns the land directly to the north where they're considering some housing?
Yeah, well, Kilbourne owns that now. There's a different investment group that would likely do that housing on that north side of the ramp. Kilbourne would be doing the Mercantile building, but they're looking at that is more condominiums, probably, 6 or 8 or 10 units along there that would be for sale.
And who owns the property north of where the Goodyear was?
Yeah, Tony Coronado, I believe that's how his name is pronounced.
So then did, in your financing, when we did Roberts, was one of the few times we did general obligation bonds and turned out to be less expensive. And this, are you looking at the same type of thing this time around?
Yeah, no, we're not. We're looking at actually annual appropriation bonds. The advantage of that is we can go 25 years versus just 20. That's what we did with Roberts, and the coverage requirements are less. But the other thing, yeah, they will be, interest would be taxable on these because it's in a public-private development, just like ROCO was. So, they're the bond experts, so I'm kind of waiting for the recommendations and not giving them too much.
Right, have they told us anything about percentage? I think we were at what, 2.2 or something on the Roberts?
I don't know if it's, I don't think it can be that low, and they've moved up since those were sold in 2015.
Okay, but 25 years might help with some of the.
That would help with the payment, and then I think they can adjust the, again, try to pay a little less in the beginning and a little more later when our revenue is better.
And then you can always prepay them without penalty, right?
Yeah, again, that's something that they can put in there, but I don't know if we'll be in a shape to do that, but.
I hope we are. Our goal, if we listen to interstate parking, will incrementally increase our rates so we can get where we need to be, because we're
And I think-
really quite a bit less than a lot of cities that are doing this.
And I'm glad you mentioned rates, because I think we will need to look at probably a higher than average rate increase in order to make this work. And the general concept is that, I think this ramp will be probably in the $100 a month range, but Roberts and Civic, where it's the highest demand, that'll probably go to about $125. That's in our financial model, so we're probably going to need to go up by, $19 at those facilities. But we have real high demand for it, and I'm confident we won't lose any parkers. We'll look at some type of increase at NP and GTC also probably need to be in the 10% range.
Right, and that incrementalism as far as, not sticking them so much right in 1 year, but just, kind of build it up I think is gonna be a path of least resistance and not such a shock. But I know that Interstate's given us some good recommendations that are pretty aggressive, and I think we've come to a good middle ground as we increase year to year.
Mr. Chairman, the only problem that I think I see with that sometimes is when you have a parking garage that's at $100 and you have a flat lot that is at 85, and I've always thought it doesn't seem fair to those people that are paying that kind of rate.
So then what you're saying, Randy, is, maybe we should be thinking about maybe leaving the flat lots, reduce, and not increase the rate.
I'm thinking more parking garages and less
Flat
surface lots, sell the surface lots to developers, I think.
Yeah, well, it's proven. I mean, we were making $3,400. That's what the city's income was on the 3 private lots at Roberts. $3,400 for those 3 private lots. Now, by the end of these 3 phases, it'll be $700,000. And then you got 220 people living there and 30 businesses and still adequate parking. So it's a good model.
Well, and it also takes those cars off the streets.
Right.
It makes it easier to rotate cars at 90 minutes on the street level too. So it does a lot of things when you have a parking garage.
Right. So, that's good. So things are going, what do we expect now? Agreements on the mercantile?
I mean, ideally, we'll have everything together in July and be able to start construction in the fall. That's our goal, and be done in a year. So, as far as the downtown schedule, Block 9 will be done and available, for some parking in August. RDO headquarters won't move into there until sometime probably in the summer of 2020. And so hopefully by fall, then we would have space for other people to move to.
Right. So, Jay, you're helping with financing. You're sitting in on some of those meetings. Is that right? Was the,
At this point, we're mainly dealing with Baker Tilly in our finance department.
But Jim did visit, we visited with our CFO and visited the bank and checked everything out, so. But back to your comment, Jim, about the Roberts ramp, this has sent such a positive message to our team as far as recruitment and retention of employees downtown. They have to have safe parking. Roberts ramp has showed that to people. The bank's going to grow downtown. They're projecting another 30 employees. So we need parking. And it's sending such a good message, and the work that Jim's done to get that message out, and it assures management that they can grow downtown, and we're not going to move out of downtown. And so it just shows that the parking ramps are so important.
yeah.
As we've looked at the demand for this mercantile facility, I know, Bell Insurance has got some growth, as well as Gate City, and so I expect it's gonna open full. And so we'll be talking about where do we go from there.
Sure. So it's right to the subject is, now that we're in the design phase, there's things that we would do different at Roberts to make it more future ready as far as available runs for conduit, for electric chargers, smart sensors and smart lighting, things that are coming. But then also, we've got partial, they call it mobility hub. So you think of a parking structure, not just for cars, but for any way you move around. So we do have bike parking there, secured bike parking, and then some that's basically just a cable lock, and that kind of sets the example. But cities have found that, to make these developments more useful as transportation options evolve, to think ahead a little bit. We might not have it now. Dave?
So, Mr. Chair, the other thing is, so this committee back a few years ago had a plan for we had a priority list of the lots. Well, now we're kind of pecking away at that list, and I think maybe we should look at that again. What is the new order or what are the new potential in the future? Because I think when you talk about other businesses coming downtown, we're going to have more. And so I don't know if that makes sense to you, but anyway.
Yeah, so we did have a list of priorities, but as Dave mentioned, things change, so I think this mercantile block was number one, and then Roberts was number two. But, so we have that, but I agree with you that things have changed so much that we need to evaluate that on an ongoing basis as far as, okay, so what's our next spot gonna be?
And just one more thing. So I think that we should talk to the Block 9 about the 2-hour thing and show them what has happened at ROCO, that actually the 2-hour thing has been a positive, and to encourage them to follow our lead, because I think that would send a good message. And so anyway, I don't know if that's us that would do that or someone, or maybe the staff, but I think that the 2-hour thing is proven to be successful. And so that I hope they would follow us.
Yeah, we've been showing them those numbers, but they haven't made that final decision yet, but we're trying to get them to at least do an hour or 2 hours free, because we've given up a lot of street parking for the construction, so I think it would be some goodwill on their part to have some free short-term parking.
So who makes those decisions for Block 9?
RDO is going to be the operator of the ramp.
So Scott Neal?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Anything else on those subjects? The next is discuss the uniform nighttime parking enforcement. And so Nicole has kind of put a marker in for the budget request. They don't really know quite how much, but that's one thing, is budget request. But as important is to develop the policy that will be effective in the current time. So Commissioner Thorson, you had some comments, and have you got any more ideas? One of the things is right now that I think our policy says from 2 to 7, and that doesn't work anymore because our bars are open till 2 and the workers still have to park. So have you got some suggestions from what you've seen?
Well, I haven't, you know, I kept my notes from last week, or from last month, just so that we could talk about that again. But again, the thing that makes a big difference are parking garages. It eliminates what we need on the streets at night. You know, for me particularly, I'll just, as an example for me, if we were to take away some of the parking in front of the old Broadway, I don't have a particular problem with that. You know, sometimes we'll get, at 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll have people sitting in their car and you can't get them to move, and it becomes a party outside of the bar. And so, you know, I'm just as interested as anybody as a businessman in downtown Fargo to take a look at this and see how we can remedy it. But, you know, as I said the last meeting, when the most crucial, or the problem that we have is the snow problem. And, you know, again, parking garages take care of all of that as well. But if we had the parking garages in the downtown area, when you do have a snow event that happens in the middle of the afternoon, you know, as we discussed last time, you can announce that, you know, no parking on Broadway, and you clean the snow up. You know, so we have 3 months out of the year we get a lot of snow, and we're just going to have to figure that out. But I don't think it's a difficult thing to figure out.
I think it's more than 3 months.
Yeah.
Then we have snow.
No.
That's
6
just
months.
because you're in Mexico for 3 months, so it's 3 months for you. Dave?
So, Mr. Chair, the thing I'd like us to have is, and the DCP can help us with this, is to talk to all the businesses and all the residents that live down there, but to have it the same time of no parking year-round, so we don't have this on and off, because
Exactly.
I think that confuses people. And so, to give you an example, so like from 3 to 6 in the morning every night, there's no park, and that would give, because like Randy, they move their own snow. Once you don't move the snow, it freezes solid, and then the accessibility goes to 0. I mean, when you have that ridge, people that have trouble either can't walk, or you have to go all the way to the end of the block. And so the downtown Broadway's got to change now. We have to get all the snow off there, because this is a pedestrian area all the time. And so Randy shouldn't have to have his own thing. We should be able to do that as a city. Do you know what I mean? So, all right, that's the end of my thing, but I'm not that bright, and so I like to have it the same, instead of going, it's April, can I park from when to when?
Exactly.
So anyway,
Yeah.
thank
So
you.
the year-round uniform enforcement, again, we did this, we didn't used to enforce on Saturday mornings, and we got some pushback, but now it's just everybody knows that you don't park overnight on Broadway, and that works. So there'll be some resistance, but I think it's important for us, and maybe it's not that big of changes, but Melissa, do you, have you had any discussion on this at your board level and with your members?
Good morning. Yes, we've had conversations with Interstate, Ben Dow, and other city people, and we plan on creating a survey and sending that out hopefully next week to meet your timeline from what you proposed last month.
Right.
So we agree, consistency, absolutely, and then the snow is a wild card. So we wanted to really meet with Ben Dow and rack his brain and figure out how we can do this together.
Right, and again, you know, I'd mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the cities have had best practices. Some of the parking revenue has helped for cleanliness and safety is really number one. Jay, you mentioned when you're recruiting and retaining, that's a big item, and that's year-round. You know, so having more feet on the street, the bid has they do a good job, but they don't have a lot of staff. So again, maybe we've seen other places where they use some parking revenue to help supplement some of that cleaning and safety that BID does such a good job at. They might be able to add, you know, a little more staff, and we would get the benefit from our parking tickets that's direct with cleaning and safety. So that's when we speak with Nicole about budget requests and Jim, I think that's something that we should be including.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. But the city and BID have a good agreement. It's an MOU, but it's pretty heavy on the BID, and they've only got 3 people, so.
Well, and I do think the consistency on the policies, it's really, really important that we set our strategy now, because how quickly we forget what it's like in the wintertime, and then it becomes critical, and then it becomes crisis. And we have an opportunity now to make sure that all of these rules and regulations are in place and that it's consistent. And the cleanliness part of it is really, really important too, because not only does it help in terms of recruitment of people to downtown, but it's also people who are visiting here, and they see that and they know that we care about this place, and it gives them a sense of place. And
Right, so the gutters being clean year-round is a big deal.
Exactly.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, exactly.
Really is.
Yep. So, thanks for doing that survey, and we'll be waiting to hear, and if you could send that out, when you start to get results prior to our next meeting, if that's the case, that'd be great. Thanks, Melissa. Anything else on this subject, Jim?
Got a couple things for other business, but
Sure.
not on that.
Well, we've got consideration for signage changes at Island Park Ramp, and Aaron, do you want to come on up and give us your ideas? We know that Island Park is underutilized, and with the construction on Main Avenue, it's really going to be difficult for those retailers and the neighbors there. So he's got some ideas about how we might get some more use out of the Island Park Ramp. So you want to introduce yourself, Aaron?
Yeah, good morning. Aaron Templin, downtown business owner and resident. So I sent a message concerning the Island Park ramp. I don't know if any of you guys have been in there recently or any time in the last, I don't even know how long.
I was there in May 4th.
Sure. And prior to moving downtown, I would park there 2 times a year, St. Patrick's Day and during the street fair. And to kind of illustrate this point of its underutilization, there's nowhere to park downtown, kind of around where I'm the business owner of Front Street Tap Room. So they're on the 600 block of Main Avenue. Cars going around everywhere, nowhere to park, go into the ramp, right on the first floor. There's maybe 3 cars in the lot, and I can just walk right out. So the other day, I was because we have construction going on right now, I've been talking with like Brad Wimmer and other business owners, kind of what can we do to kind of ease the pain of construction, and we have this giant ramp that nobody's using, so kind of went and checked it out, saw what was going on, why nobody's using it, and it seemed pretty clear that there's really no indication that you can park there. I sent some pictures to illustrate that point. There's signs probably about 2 foot by 1 foot that say, and they're older signs, this is contract parking only. I mean, I could read it too. You will be towed if you park here. Then when you pull in, there's a kind of a round circular cylinder that says contract parking. So I'm sure that happens all the time where people, oh, this is a ramp, this is a city ramp, maybe I can park here. I heard that I could park here. You pull in, I can't park here. So then you get out. So yeah, I think it's pretty simple changes that can be made. And I actually went by there this morning and saw that they did put one of those blue signs that says free parking nights and weekends, which was very encouraging. I think that's a very extremely simple solution to this problem. I would also, I think people could still be confused by that contract parking as you pull in. So if there could be some change to that, yeah, I guess that's about it.
And, so the occupancy there has, overall, it's not that, it's not over 100%, but it's not as good as it should be, and nobody parks on the roof. So, I think didn't we establish like a $55 deal if you park on the roof, or we were going to do that and we didn't? What happened?
I think there's some things that I could work on with interstate parking as far as, policy changes on that facility, and maybe Paul could comment on this too, but one of the things we talked about was eliminating the gates and then just having kind of hang tags for the monthly parkers, and instead of, and then installing one of those pay stations, so if someone could, pay to park, we could probably maybe do similar, at that facility and offer 2 hours free, but then you pay after that. So I don't know, Paul, if you have some thoughts on that or how long it would take to implement, but certainly after a lot of the Sanford people moved out in January, yeah, the occupancy rate is quite low on that facility. We also talked about with the demand for parking downtown, changing the link bus instead of having to go to Moorhead is to just run into this Island Park ramp and then up Broadway a few blocks. Because the Island Park ramp, I believe we're at $59 there, where as you can see, we're going to be quite a bit higher. Because I think there is some percentage of the people downtown that would, not mind riding a shuttle if they could save $50 a month on parking.
Yeah, so,
Paul, do you want to comment?
Yeah, well, the equipment at Island Park has been basically inoperable since 2016. So we have been operating at kind of like a multi-level surface lot. And that would be our recommendation, is to remove all the old gates and things like that. We've got these digital machines from Second Avenue North and South that were in storage still. We can place those in each stairwell lobby. And with the proper signage, you can, register your car 2 hours free, and if you want to stay later than that, then you can pay. But yeah, it would be a very simple conversion for us, and we would recommend that.
right, so we were using the Passport system for that, so it fits perfectly with our new vendor. And I was just in St. Paul, and it's so slick, you just use your phone and you don't have to mess with anything. And the 2 hours free, I mean, why not? I mean, we've learned that it's been helping to get those parkers that aren't really, and maybe not the daily parkers, but just to get that 2 hours free, we might find the same type of success. So how soon can we do this?
Well, you tell me when we can get the ball rolling. The one thing that would be tricky is, make the decision if we're going to have people register for no matter what. If they're going to be there for 1 hour, will they still register or will they not? Because it will fall on the hands of our enforcement staff on, and create the policies to, get your first welcome, and then people will start registering even if they're only going to be there for an hour or so.
So maybe before, during this time between our next meeting, we can come up with maybe some recommendations for how we might do that, and then look at the signage, like Aaron says. I talked with, we had Mobility Matters Forum last week, and part of this is they don't always have to be big buses to move people around, and with Main Avenue being torn up, that Broadway deal won't work for Island Park. But it may work for the rest of it, with a smaller type of a bus, maybe a cutout, like something like paratransit or something like that. That's basically just going up and down Broadway. Dave?
So, Mr. Chair, especially with the construction going on, I think we should do some kind of temporary thing, like immediately.
Yeah.
And even if it's just, how about let's just open it wide open for the next 3 months or do something like that? 'Cause
As the Island Park?
first of all, I'd like to apologize and give you encouragement that if you hold on for 2 years, Main Avenue is going to be so much better. It's going to be a great thing for your, and I know it's tremendously difficult and you're a small business, but I'm just telling you, you just got to hold on because it's going to be awesome. But that's no joke. I think we should consider doing that. Do something. I mean, they need help. We all know those businesses are being, and why not do that for 3 months or something? So
Well,
anyway,
and this is the opportunity to change people's behavior in terms of their perspective on that ramp and using it now when the weather is nice. If we can change their behavior so they're using it now, then they may be willing to walk when the weather gets colder, and because that's part of their pattern. And that has been underutilized for a long time, quite frankly.
Mr. Chairman, and I think, between 11 and 1:30 at the YMCA, the parking lots are full, and I know we made some changes so people can park there longer, but I don't think Y members know that they can go into that ramp because you see the contract only when you pull in there. So I think if we made that known, that would be helpful, especially with construction going on right now. It's really tough. And then people that are using Island Park, you'll see a lot of people that aren't going to the Y that pull in there and they go to Island Park. So they're taking up spaces for members and they aren't using the Y. So that's a big problem. And you can't really have employees of the Y monitoring that all day. It's just not possible. They'll put up signs, but people don't care about the signs. They'll pull in there and you'll see a family of 6 park in the parking lot and take up a space. So.
And so at Mobility Matters, Tom Smith had made a presentation about bike share. So they have bike share rack at the Y, and the Y donated it. But now we could move that. But again, that could, again, we could accentuate bike parking at Island Park, that when you enter, immediately to the left is a perfect spot for bike parking and/or Great Rides Bike Share Rack. So for us to be thinking about, okay, if somebody parks here and wants to go somewhere else, how do they get there? Well, it'd be nice, there's bike docks up and down Broadway all the way up to Sanford. So again, that's just one example of how we can get multiple use out of these, what we call parking structure, and what is people around other cities are calling mobility hubs. And really, I think that's a term that we can kind of work towards as far as the use of these things, because then you're being future ready. And you accommodate cars, but you're accommodating bikes, you're accommodating even Uber drivers in some of these mobility ramps or hubs. They're allowing a certain area where Uber drivers and Lyft drivers stage so they don't block up the street during those surge times. I mean, that gets to be where they're racing across the street to jump in an Uber, and it's a safety issue. But it's kind of like a queue at an airport, to give them places where they can queue and respond to their calls, and that helps reduce congestion. So those are some things we can be thinking about.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Brian's comments and also Dave's comments, but, what I'd like to know is what are we getting for a rate right now?
Well, to keep in mind, we're booking $13,000 a month in monthly parking.
Right.
Yeah, and so, Paul, that's my first point would be all right, how do we maintain that as we take Dave's comments and Brian's comments and try to work all those things together? So we should look at that for the next meeting, but we don't want to lose that revenue either.
I think, though, just to follow up on Dave's comment, unless you have an objection, we'll go ahead and have those pay stations installed in the stairwells and start out with a 2-hour free, as soon as we can get the signs changed, and then we can kind of follow up and say, do we want to do more than that?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion from Brian.
Second.
We have a second from Margie. All in favor, say aye.
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 So that's great. So we're getting some.
So let's get the message out.
That's exactly
It's really, honestly, we can use the resources of DCP, but we need to do it in a consistent fashion and in something that really captures people's attention.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just boring parking stuff. And so you need to do something that really has some
JJ Gordon
pizzazz.
he's really passionate about this, so
explaining,
I think he might care.
It's only boring, Margie, when you can't find a parking spot.
Dave?
So, Mr. Chair, so how's that for good response from the parking thing?
Great, yeah.
But I do think that as the businesses along there, you could give out little coupons or who knows what to get people to, and I know it's a challenge, but I think a lot of their customers don't realize it's even there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think most people in the city know that it's even there.
Right.
That's,
And to your remarks, I think using this year as an educational piece to get people used to using it, keeping that revenue, I think we're going to be fine this summer just because the road in front of us is still open. Broadway will still be open for most of the year. I think next summer is going to be a lot tougher. So, if we could do something where it's free for those 3 months, we eat a little bit on the revenue, I think that would be beneficial to us. This year is probably okay.
and, remember that it is already free after 5 and on weekends. So the 2-hour deal during the day, to me, I sometimes if you make something so easy and try to bring it back, you get resistance. So we might want to just consider that. It's already available. Let's just put it on the map. And, I'm thinking about table tents, things like that.
Yeah.
So maybe we can help kind of co-promote with you guys about, just letting people know, put it on your table. Yeah, did you know you can park for 2 hours free during the day and free at night and on weekends?
Great. One other remark, since we're talking about this, there's a giant man on the front of the building. Do you guys know about that or the history of it? I just think it's very strange.
Well, actually,
I'm not sure about the history, but since I'm here, I'm going to bring it up.
Before we had an arts commission.
Called Cool
the
Public
only
Art.
people
I think
that
it's
were
cool.
doing anything
I like
for
it.
anything
I love
for
it.
art
I think it's
was the
awesome.
parking commission. So we did a little mobile in front of the GTC that That was in
They're
2000.
gonna be all over Fargo like that.
And then, so in Denver, at their convention center, they have a big bear that's sitting outside, leaning on the building. So that's where they got the inspiration for the giant man.
Great. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I add one more thing? It's just about the shuttle. So I'm sure you've heard Sanford, they're going to be investing a lot into the downtown campus over the next 5 or 10 years. And so the shuttle, I do think we should be willing to look at moving that and how it works. Just because it's like a lot of things, if it's not, how can it be better? And I do think having that, let's say that they make that bigger, having that go up and down Broadway, those are all customers for all the places and places to park and all that, so.
Yep, exactly. So I think it was 1940, we had 4 million people using the streetcars. Well, we're not gonna have streetcars, but we can have a little shuttle running up and down Broadway.
And to make it even nicer for you, Mike, they have electric ones now. and
Yeah,
so-
they do, you're right.
Only have solar powered.
Solar power, electric, yeah. All right, so let's see. Anything else? Aaron, thanks so much for coming. Thanks for contacting me. And again, we're on your side, so we want to help. So thanks. The next item, other business at all?
Couple of things to report. One was, we did come to an agreement with the banks on purchasing the land under the Island Park ramp. That was, we were under a 20-year lease, and so our city attorney's working on that, and so we'll get that purchased. We're using the tax increment financing funds for that. Also, some of the improvements we were doing last year, things that got delayed were cameras at both the Civic ramp and to upgrade the ones at Island Park. I've got, those plans are being reviewed by our IT department, and so hopefully we can get that bid out this summer. The other renovation work that was done on the Island Park and the Civic is substantially complete, so we're just getting final payments done on that. So those facilities are in good condition. The other factor, the city has hired a facilities manager. I haven't had a chance to talk with them in detail about these parking facilities, but I think that'll be a good asset for us to help maintain these facilities in the future. It's kind of something we've lacked in the past.
Has that person started yet?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. That's something that's been a long-term goal, to get a consolidated operations manager for all the buildings, and that is gonna be helpful for us.
Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the order? Dave, who's liaison for trans? Oh, it's John, right? But, Julie and Matt are excited about that idea, right? Good. Anything else? Anybody want to move to adjourn?
So move.
Randy wants to stay.
Second.
How about you, Brian? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Thanks.